Um, Welcome to the event about BYU applications. We're really excited to have all of you. We have almost 400 people here, which is great. Had thousands that RSVP'd, and I know many of you are watching the recording. So we're recording this, and we'll send it out to all of you. So no need to take notes. You can if you'd like. We've done this event maybe 5 times, 3 or 4 times. Yeah, probably 4 or 5 times now. And it's always one of our favorite events as BYU alums. So we're super excited to have all of you. We are hosting, I'll talk more about this in a minute, but we are hosting a big boot camp for BYU applicants, and it's completely free, paid for by sponsors and other donations. So we're really excited. We're going to have all the panelists tonight that are going to be hosting sessions. So make sure you sign up for that. We'll drop the link in the chat. We'll also follow up with it, and I'll talk more about it, but that's going to be an awesome boot camp series. So yeah, welcome to the Getting Accepted to BYU event. We're going to cover a bunch of different things. We obviously don't have time to cover everything in this one event, which is why we're hosting a boot camp. But we'll talk about recommendations. We'll talk about essays. We'll talk about some additional application strategies and tips. We'll also send you a bunch of free resources, especially for the folks that are registering for the boot camp. Again, it's completely free. So register for that, and we'll send you a checklist of everything. We're also going to have a Facebook group and other things that will kind of help you in this journey. We want to make sure that you get all the help you need. We know this is a very stressful and exciting time, and are excited to be supporting you. So we'll just do quick introductions. My name is John. I'm the CEO of Leland. I went to BYU back in the day, and then worked in tech for a few years, and then went to Stanford for my MBA, which is where I started Leland. You'll also see Erica and Amelia in the chat. They are the ones that are hosting and coordinating all of this. So super grateful for them and their hard work. You'll hear from us, and we'll be sending you emails and other helpful things. Would also be great. We'll open up we have so many people here, so we're not going to keep the chat open the entire time because it might be a mess. But if you want to drop in the chat where you're dialing in from, it's always helpful to see the people that are from around the world, around the country. It's always fun and if you want to turn your cameras on, it's always nice to see faces, but no worries. We got England. That's probably the furthest so far. We got a bunch of Utah, Texas, Peru. Nice. This is great. Wow. Yeah, you can see we barely keep up. Dominican Republic, Germany. Wow. All right, we'll let these continue to trickle in. Welcome to all of you. It's so excited to have so many. We're already at 430 people. This is awesome. We have a stacked lineup of panelists tonight. Super excited to have Christian, Amanda, and Susie, and I'll let them introduce themselves. But before I do, I just want to say that we have the best of the best here. These folks that have lived and breathed the BYU application for a long time and have helped thousands of people through these events, through Leland, through their own practices, through a number of different channels. And so we're really excited to have their expertise here. I'll let each of them introduce themselves, but Christian, do you want to start us off?
Yeah. Hey, everybody. My name is Christian Hansen. I'm a BYU alum and a former member of the BYU Admissions Committee. I also got my master's degree at the London School of Economics. So UK person, I'm shouting out for you right there. But yeah, I coach people full time, and I help people get into all sorts of universities, but BYU is a particular specialty of mine. And I love helping students navigate the process, and not about just getting into BYU, but how can you go beyond BYU and use this opportunity to think about your life and how you want to make the biggest difference in the world. So grateful that you're here.
Awesome. Thank you, Christian. Amanda, go for it.
Hi, I'm Amanda Wirtz. I'm also very excited to be here with this panel. The three of us have done this together, and so it's really fun to reunite every year and talk about the BYU application and just general college admissions tips. I think one of the great things about all the panels that Leland provides are just tips that you can take onto other applications that you may be working on outside of BYU as well. I also went to BYU. I'm a BYU alumna and went on to earn my graduate degree at Harvard's Graduate School of Education. I've worked in a variety of industries, including college admissions. So I was a director of admissions at 2 different graduate schools in California and went on to general management consulting from there. And I'm actually now an education policy advisor for a presidential institute. So have a lot of great industry experience across the board, but I love working with my clients on college admissions and really helping them to put their best foot forward. So looking forward to our discussions tonight.
Thank you, Amanda. All right, Susie, bring us home.
Hi, everyone. I'm Susie Boyce. I also a BYU graduate. I started out my career teaching English and German, and shortly after I started being a writing coach. I started with resumes for several years, and then about 17 years ago, I started helping college applicants. I've helped them get into lots of universities. I've helped over 150 clients with their applications, and BYU also is a big specialty of mine. I'm also a published writer. I've published and in several local and national publications, as well as done a lot of copywriting. So that's something that's really in my wheelhouse. And I love working with BYU clients. They are my favorite. Don't tell anyone.
I love it. All right. Thank you. So as you can see, we have an awesome lineup. We've done this. We call these three the BYU Big Three because they're so great. And it's always fun to hear their insights. So just to give you a quick overview of Leland, I know some of you have probably been to our events before, but those of you who haven't, our mission is to unlock human potential by making the world's expertise, like these panelists, more accessible to you. You can actually reach out to them and schedule free intro calls with them to talk about your college admissions plans. So we encourage you to do that. We'll drop their profiles in the chat. We also do events like this and do boot camps. So our goal is to help you. So whether you're applying to BYU or you're applying to medical school or you're applying to jobs like software engineering or management consulting, we have folks to help you. We have about 1,000 coaches on the platform. As I mentioned, we do anything from one-on-one coaching to live cohort-based courses, and then a ton of these free community events. We'll likely do another BYU event in a couple of months, so make sure you sign up for Leland and kind of stay in the loop. We'll keep you posted as well, probably on another topic after we do the boot camp. So make sure you stay in the loop, and we're excited to have you. We've helped tens of thousands of folks land their dream jobs or get into their dream schools, and we hope to play a small part in your journey. So that is the quick overview of Leland. I wanted to just take a quick minute to talk about the boot camp. We're going to have 4 sessions, 90 minutes each, where we're going to go deep into various topics on the BYU application. Again, it is completely free to you because we have these amazing corporate sponsors and donations. We usually actually do these in a paid capacity, but BYU wants us to not provide any sort of paid admissions coaching. And so because of that, we've worked with these, we pay these coaches to deliver the content, but this is completely free to you. So you can access some amazing expertise. We're going to do two sessions on essays. There are a lot of essays, and we'll talk through that. And there's like additional essays on activities that you're involved in. We're also going to do a session on recommendations, and then one on activities, foundations, resume, and all the other pieces in the application. So make sure you sign up for that. That begins in August, at the end of August. We'll send you more information about it, but make sure you sign up. We will have to cap the number of enrollees on that because of just capacity limits, but it's free until those limits get hit. And then we also get lots of questions around, okay, so what can I do if I need help, but don't really know where to go? So we've actually worked with about 25 coaches, including these 3, in order to offer free BYU help if you work with them on the Common application. So there's also overlap between a couple of the questions on the Common App. So you can work with them on the Common App, and you can apply those learnings to your BYU application for free. They will also help you for free on the BYU application. We're so grateful and lucky to have these coaches that are willing to do that. And have met with the BYU admissions committee and want to make sure that any offering we provide to you is something that you can feel confident using in order to also check the box that you did not get paid help. This is all free if you work with them on the Common App. So we're happy to talk with you about your specific situation. Many of you are applying to multiple schools. Some of you are just wanting to apply to BYU. Some of you are wanting just Utah schools. You can set up a call with a BYU alum on our team. We have like 10 of us. We're based here in Utah. Used to be in the Bay Area. Now we're here in Lehigh. We have offered up our calendars for like the next week to talk you through your specific situation. So happy to answer questions about the boot camp, happy to answer questions about these applications. You can also reach out to these coaches directly. We'll drop the link in the chat for you to schedule a call. You can also do this link bit.ly/BYU application, and we can help you get started. So that's all the logistical stuff. I know we're almost at 500 people, and you guys are probably excited to dive in to the BYU stuff. I wanted to make sure we covered this before we got going. All right. So let's dive into BYU. Many of you are probably BYU fans, go to BYU sporting events, maybe have siblings or children that have attended BYU. It's an amazing place. It's also a very competitive place to get into because it is so great. If you look at some of the stats, the middle 50% of BYU attendees have a 3.86 to 4.0. Some of you in this call are thinking, that's not me. That's okay. There's lots of ways that you can stand out even without that high GPA, that high ACT or SAT. This is the last year that they're not requiring the standardized tests to apply, which is great for those of you that maybe didn't do as well as you would have liked. And we'll talk about when to submit, when not to submit. By the way, if you have questions, you can drop in the chat to me or Erica, and we will try to slot them in. But we also have lots of these questions that we're going to cover. So, and then the last thing I'd mention is that tuition at BYU is incredible. After paying for tuition at Stanford, I realized how lucky I was to go to BYU, and how affordable it is. So there's all sorts of financial reasons why people love going to BYU, but it's just an amazing place. My brother gets home from his mission tomorrow, actually, and we'll be starting there this fall, and I'm super excited for him. It's just a special place. In terms of the actual application, you can expect 5 essay questions, personal insight questions, and we'll talk through those specific ones and some of the tips, plus 2 additional activity essays. BYU does not make this application short. They want people that want to go to their school to apply to their school. So we'll talk through kind of how to slot in different things. And this is obviously where coaching and some of the boot camp will come in to kind of actually make some of these decisions. In addition to the essays, and please don't just throw together your essays a week before. These are super important. But in addition to those, you also have recommendation letters. Typically 2 or 3 are required, 1 from a high school teacher, 1 from a seminary teacher, if applicable, and then another recommender that's sort of like a mentor in the community. Could be a young men or young women's leader, could be someone in your ward. You also do get an ecclesiastical endorsement, which is sort of like a recommendation from your bishop or from your mission president. So there's kind of, they want third parties to weigh in on you as well. And then also there's transcripts that you submit. And we're going to talk through some of the specific strategies around recommendations and how to get a quality recommendation letter, because these carry a lot of weight as well. Okay, so now we're going to turn over to the panel. We have almost 500 people on this call, and would love to just kind of start broad. We're going to go into a few different topics, but maybe we'll go to you, Christian. What's kind of your first or best tip for applying to BYU?
As a former associate director of the MBA program at UC Irvine, one of the key things that was really clear is that people use college to figure out what they want in life, but college is really there to help you build the life that you want. And so my question to students starting off is, okay, so why are you hiring BYU? Right? They work for you. You're paying them money for a service or a good or something, so you can raise your life to the next level. And when you can articulate why BYU is going to help you get to the next step of where you want to go, you're going to stand out from everybody else who's merely just saying, I want to come and just have a great time, right? BYU is there to help you get from here to there. And the more that you can say, here's why I'm hiring BYU, that's going to make you stand out compared to everybody else who can't say that. So that's my number 1 tip that usually I start off with.
That's great. Yeah, we'll get into what that kind of the specifics of how to do that. It's great, Christian. Susie, maybe we'll go to you next and then finish with Amanda.
Okay, everything Christian said. And my biggest recommendation is to start as early as you can. Essays require several different rounds to get them right. Recommendations, starting early is a great idea. Once school starts, senior year is crazy and there's so much going on, and people who start earlier than that are always glad they did, and people who start later, especially right before the deadline, always regret it. So start as early as you can so you can get the most out of your time between now and when applications are due.
Awesome. Amanda?
Yeah, both. I would just echo both of the things that Christian and Susie said. I would also say BYU has a very unique mission from any other school, and I think anybody who is applying for BYU would recognize that and agree with that statement. But I don't think you can underplay on your essays or your activities or throughout your application what the mission and aims of BYU are and how you relate to those personally. So one of the things that I have my clients do when we're working on the BYU application, before we even start into the essays, is to really describe in their own words what the mission and aims of BYU are, so that you can incorporate that into your essays. Each of the essay topics, and we'll get into this, dive into this, but they really relate to each of the aims of BYU. So being able to identify those, put those into your own words, and understand at a deeper level why that really resonates with you, right? Why do you want to go to BYU? What about its unique environment is really attractive to you? And the more detailed you can get on that, the better off your application is going to be.
That's great. Yeah, it's a great segue. We're going to talk through some of the aims. A lot of people have never heard of the aims or what those are. So we're just going to run through them. Obviously, BYU is a unique place. They care a lot about you as a person, not just you as a student. And so they basically tell you, here are the kind of the aims of BYU's BYU's mission, which is spiritually strengthening, intellectually enlarging, character building, and leading to lifelong learning and service. And so as you kind of think about your application and paint them a picture of a BYU student, you can use those aims to help guide some of your writing, some of the stories you decide, and even some of the recommendations and the stories that they tell about you as a contributor on campus, not just as a smart person or a student. And that's also why GPA isn't everything, and why they do weight essays and a lot of the other parts of the application so heavily. So this is where extracurriculars, leadership positions, seminary and other things can kind of play into the application. So let's talk through the aims a bit more. Susie, we'll go back to you, and then Christian. How do you think about some of the aims and how to kind of infuse those into different parts of the BYU application?
Well, like Amanda said earlier, it's really important to get a really good idea of what they are and what they mean to you before you even start thinking about what you're going to write in your essays. And each essay, the way that I help my clients approach it is each essay should link to at least one aim. It's tricky to have them link to a lot of aims because you don't really have enough room for that. Just really think about the story that you're telling in your essay and how that shows that you demonstrate value for that aim, and how you can use what you've learned through valuing that aim, how you'll use it in the future at BYU. So just really think about aims every time you approach an essay. I had a client mom come to me, her older son had applied to BYU, and I read his essays and they were perfectly worded. Everything was perfect about them, but he didn't know anything about the aims. So they didn't show up in the essays and he hadn't been accepted. So she came to me and says, with her next son, let's get a little help. So those are critical. And that's how I would suggest to approach them.
Yeah, that's great. Christian?
Yeah, just want to second what Susie just said. It's important to kind of think how you can make every essay tie into those aims in some way. One of the things that I like to do with my clients is to ask them the question, okay, so what, right? You've just told us the story, you've told us whatever the main point is, but the question that's going inside a BYU admissions reader, right? Because I was one of them and I was in the meetings, is the questions they're asking is, so what is the student going to do on campus? Right? So connect what the story is that you're telling, the point that you're making, and then paint a picture of why that matters. What are you going to do on campus? What clubs you want to get involved in? How is this going to translate into engaging in the unique experience of living and studying on BYU campus, right? So how do you demonstrate your commitment to the BYU aims? Show how you're going to live those aims in some way on campus once you become a student, right? I get lots of clients who they go through, right? They tell these great stories similar to what Susie describes, but they don't paint a picture of why that matters, and leaves a BYU reviewer going like, well, everybody else can do that too. But the ones who can say, here's how I'm going to take this and translate it to action on campus, that's somebody who stands out compared to everybody else.
Yeah, that's great. Amanda, you'd mentioned the aims. Anything else you'd add that we didn't cover?
Yeah, as Christian was talking about that, I really thought about a client that I was working with last year on their BYU essays. And one of the prompts is about lifelong commitment to service. And we had an example that we incorporated into the essay about how she served a family in her home ward. It was a very basic kind of service project, but it was an example of when she had to be a part of a broader ward meeting the needs of an individual family. And making sure in the conclusion, she said, this will help me to build a ward family community when I go off to BYU, right? To make that connection of, so what about this particular experience or situation that will help them to get a really good picture of what you uniquely bring to BYU, what experiences, what perspectives, it might not even be a particular situation, but there may be a perspective that you are building that will help to contribute to the culture of BYU, because that is so important, so vitally important. And that's what they're trying to get at with the aims of BYU, is they have curated a very unique culture that they want to ensure that you will feel comfortable in, right? They don't want to bring somebody in who's not going to feel comfortable when there's a very heavy emphasis on service, right? Or that there's a very heavy emphasis on spirituality. They want to make sure that you feel comfortable in that environment. So think about it less as this is a way for them to eliminate my application, and more about them ensuring that you're going to have a really good experience at BYU and help to contribute to the experiences of your peers when you're there as a student.
That's great. Awesome. Okay, we'll keep going. Let's talk through recommenders. And again, like, I wish we could spend, we will spend an entire session in the boot camp. And I've gotten asked a couple of times for the link. Erica just dropped the link in the chat for the boot camp, but we're going to teach an entire session on recommender prep documents, how to pick, how to select, how to prepare, how to guide. So let's talk through some of the teacher recommender tips. Christian, we'll go back to you for this one. How do you recommend people think about picking these recommenders? And then how do you make sure that they actually do a good job and don't just throw something together the night before the deadline?
That's a great question. So one of the things to keep in mind, right, is that this application is really different than anything you've ever done in high school, right? In high school, success is whether or not you know stuff, and if you turn stuff in over a long period of time, right? An accumulation of things eventually turns into your grade. Here, it's about creating a set of consistent touch points that are drilling home on the same message. So if you're trying to really show that you're a person of service or a person of, whatever the BYU aim is, you really kind of want to lean into, then who is somebody that can truly speak to that, right? Who is someone that can contribute, support and substantiate that they're going to create a consistent touch point with what they're saying about you, right? So that's the first thing to kind of think about. Is there an overarching theme that you're trying to cultivate and communicate? And if so, is there somebody in your life that can talk about that? The other thing to think about is who can speak best to what you've accomplished, right? There's stuff that, you've been a participant in, but if there's things that you've initiated and taken charge and leadership in, now that's somebody, an adult who can describe that. That's somebody you want to lean into. Now, the second part of the question is, how do you make sure that they're not doing this last minute and this isn't just a slipshod job, right? One way to do that is start early, like literally today. Start thinking about who you want to be asking. Ask their permission in advance because they're busy people too, and they've got a lot of stuff going on. And a lot of times it's a last minute letter that's being turned in because it was a last minute ask. Right. The third thing that I always recommend is bust out grandma's old surefire chocolate chip cookie recipe book and make them a plate of cookies with a thank you note. And that is going to make sure that they pay attention and that they get it ahead of time. So think about somebody who can speak to kind of a larger message you're trying to share, who can talk about things that you've taken initiative on or you've taken the lead on, and ask early, get their permission, and then send, positive reminders and thank them either with a handwritten note or a plate of cookies. That always goes a long way.
That's great. Yeah, we actually have a recommender prep doc template that all of you will send, or I think is in a checklist, and we'll definitely get it to you in the boot camp. But basically, this is a document that says, "Hey, teacher, the application is due this date. I would love for you to write my recommendation. Here's what they're looking for. Here are the questions you're going to be asked. And here's some potential things that you could talk about that we've had, experience working on together. And this is something you can actually get help with from a coach or from your parents or someone. And when you come to that teacher, and oftentimes the teacher you want to ask is the nice teacher. They're the cool, they're the popular teacher. And they're the ones that are getting asked by 50 other students, right? Especially if you're in an area that have, where lots of folks are applying to BYU. And so when they sit down to knock out their 25 recommendations, which one are they going to start with? They're probably going to start with the one that came with the plate of cookies and the recommender prep doc that said, hey, here's some things that you can talk about. Think about the message that conveys to them. You're a high school student that goes above and beyond. Think about what it's telling them about how much you care, how much you want this. And so that I would highly recommend doing that. That'll make you stand out. And I know some of you are thinking, does ChatGPT spit these out, or how do I like get around doing this? It makes a big difference. And I would not leave this process up to chance. You want them to feel like you've drafted them onto your team. The last thing I would recommend doing is having a conversation early about, and as Christian said, consider even saying, hey, I'm thinking about applying to BYU, or I want to apply to BYU. I'm still learning about the process and what would be best, but I wanted to see if you might be open to writing a recommendation for me. And just by asking them that they would be open to writing a recommendation, you can get a feel of, how they respond. I did this when I was applying to business school, and someone was like, yeah, you think I'm the best person? I don't know. I'm happy to, but I don't know. And I was like, great. I now know you're not the right person. This is great. I can go to someone else. And I asked someone else and they said, yes, let me write your recommendation. I'd love to do it. And I immediately knew that they were a better fit. So just kind of putting the feelers out early, even if you're not getting them, squared away, can kind of help you narrow that in and figure out who would be best. This is especially important, I think, for teachers and kind of that non-relative recommender. But even seminary, as you start the new seminary year, make sure you're going to class and you're not on your phone in class, especially at least for the first few weeks, right? While you're trying to make a good impression. That will really help. Okay, let's go to
John,
talk through the essays.
Can I speak to that seminary piece? A lot of people don't know that it is their senior year seminary teacher that gives the letter of recommendation. So those first weeks of seminary are absolutely critical because they are the ones that are going to be writing your letter. So it's one of those things where they're not going to know a lot about you. And so those letters that you are writing for your teachers, you should also write for your seminary teacher. I have all my clients use those for their seminary teachers too. That document that Leland has produced is so critically important for the seminary teachers as well, because they don't have a lot of background information on you. So giving them very specific examples of how you've been a leader in seminary over the last 3 years will be really helpful to your letter there.
That's a great call out. Thank you, Amanda. Okay, let's talk through some of the essays, which I know lots of you are excited and nervous about. So there are 5 kind of core questions. The first one is for you to describe a topic that you find really engaging, and it makes you lose all track of time, and kind of talk through what made you engage further in that topic, idea, or experience. This is also a Common App question. So lots of folks that are working with coaches will pick this one to work with their coach, and then they can adapt it for BYU. There's obviously lots of things you can talk about here. We'll talk through a few examples. The second one is, how have you become aware of significant needs in your family, community, or school, and how you kind of work towards meeting those needs. The third one is describing a time that your efforts have fallen short, and how you kind of recovered from that defeat. That is also a Common App question. The fourth one is kind of we strive to create a rich and varied environment. We want people that have lots of different interests. Tell us about you. Tell us about your interests, your story. And then the last one is about BYU. They want people that care about a spiritual learning environment. And so for you to talk about what your testimony and what your faith means to you is super important. And obviously this is a very unique, special essay to write. So as you can see, there's potential for lots of overlap here. And this is not the time for you to talk about baseball, which is probably what I wanted to do in every single one of your essays. This is a time for you to sit down and think about, what are the 10 things that make me unique? And what are some of the different experiences that kind of show, and it might be, it might be reading, it might be the stock market, it might be, you have a little business, it might be, something much more simple. It might be the way you've helped your family. There's lots of different things that can qualify here. And we'll talk through what to do when you don't feel like you're kind of unique. So let's go to you, Susie. How do people approach all of these essays, and how do you think about the most important things to include? What do kind of winning essays have in them?
So like we've talked about before, a powerful story from your life that shows growth and things that you've learned and ways that you've changed because of that story. Definitely connecting it to an aim. and then showing what you will do because of it and how you will impact BYU. A really good way to look at these before you make your final decisions on your stories is you ask yourself, why did BYU choose this prompt? Of the hundreds of prompts they could have written, why this specific prompt, and what do they want to know about you? So for example, the engaged learning essay, what do you lose all track of time doing? And what is it that you do to learn more about it? And what resources do you use? This is, for example, can be all about what type of student you're going to be, so that when you're on campus, how are you going to engage with the learning of whatever you decide to major in? So think about why BYU is asking the question before you make final decisions on what you're going to share in the essay.
That's great. Amanda, anything you'd add on this?
Yeah, I think one of the things that you mentioned, John, before, which I think is really important, is writing a list of 10 unique things about you, right? And one of the first brainstorming tools that I use with my clients is brainstorming 20 random facts about yourself. So it doesn't even have to be the things that are most unique, because sometimes when you start that way, it can feel really daunting. But oftentimes when we're just talking about random facts about ourselves, and then what are your 5 most important values, and tying those together and really trying to create a holistic narrative about yourself. I think one of the great things about having 5 different essay questions is that you can not only show what's unique about you, but you can show all the different facets of who you are. I think schools are looking more for people who are have unique things to contribute. So that's either somebody who has gone down the rabbit hole into something that they're really particularly interested in, and they have become kind of a master of that particular specialty, or it's somebody who has had experiences in life that have given them unique perspectives. It's not necessarily somebody who is diehard engineering and they have created their own YouTube channel to be able to disseminate educational materials on engineering, right? But it could be you who has had a very experience over the last 4 years, 3 or 4 years of your life, and you have really unique perspectives to be able to contribute. So I'd say use those 5 essays to really show those different facets of who you are, because nobody is just a one-trick pony, and hopefully that really comes across in all of your essays. So I also say the most important thing is to not duplicate what you're saying in each of the essays. If you're really into baseball, that's awesome. But what about baseball has led you to a lifelong love of service, right? Show something else about you that helps them to get the most holistic picture of who you are.
Yeah. Christian, go for it.
I'm
going to also switch to this question, but please continue on that.
Yeah, you guys, in LDS culture, we have a lot of modesty. Like, oh, I don't know if I should say that, or, maybe that's too boastful, whatever. No, this is your time to shine, right? Tell your story. There was a time when I was reading applications, and this situation happens a lot, where this one student talked about this passion project that they did, and it was about, rescuing, ducks in their local pond and studying them. And I was so intrigued by it that I got out of my chair and went into my, colleague's office. I said, you got to read this essay about this kid who, was really interested in researching ducks. And what are the things that you want, if an admissions officer were to get up, go across the office and tell someone, you got to read this, right? What is the 3 things, the 5 things that you want them to say, oh yeah, this is this person. This is, what is it you want them to tell about you? And that's one way you can start to solidify, what you want to write about, because those experiences really do happen. So what are the main things you want them to talk about? And this is not the time to be modest, because, people don't accept or reject you. They accept or reject their perception of you, right? And what you write, you're giving them the tools to decide if they even like you or not, right? So you got to share your big stuff.
Yeah, well, I'm going to go back to you, Christian, for this one, because I think this is a question that so many of folks, we hear this question all the time. What if I'm just like a boring old kid? Like maybe I joined this club, or maybe I did a sport till I was 13, but like I don't feel special or unique. What do you say to those folks? How do they find some of those threads to pull on and stand out?
So I'm gonna pull up my board here, you guys. This
Love
is
this.
an important moment here. Okay, so you all have these incredible experiences, right? And it can feel like some of them are really generic. But I call this the pyramid of participation. And there's 4 levels that people typically participate and engage in stuff, right? One is where you're a participant, where you showed up, you had a pulse, congratulations, right? The next level up is as a contributor, where you got your elbow grease going, you jumped in, you really helped out. The next level is as a leader, where again, you took charge, right? And then the top one is where you were an initiator. Hopefully all my spelling is right, because talking and writing is hard. So here's the deal. About 50% of people, write that they're participants. About 30% say they're contributors. 15% talk about their leadership stuff, but only the top 5% talk about how they are initiators on something. So if you're wondering, what thing should I talk about? My question is, how can you find an activity, big or small, that shows that you took initiative in some way, right? Or you led. Focus on describing those events. So you're like, well, I played soccer. That doesn't make me that special. Where was a moment in your soccer where you took initiative in some way, right? Or you were a leader in some way. Now, here's another little quick thing. It's July. There's a long time before this application is due. You have some time to think about what are ways you can take initiative to create change and create impact over the next couple months. You still can do that, and you can be creating the story that you want to be writing about. So if you feel like you're generic or overrepresented, that's normal, then find a time where you either contributed, led, or best of all, took initiative. And if you do that, you're going to stand out from 95% of other candidates.
That's awesome. Amanda, Susie, anything you'd add?
I would just, this is going to be a plug for coaching. I think coaches can really help you to determine if your idea for your essay is going to be generic or overrepresented, because we've seen a lot of essays, right? And the 3 of us who are on the call right now have seen a lot of essays, and we've also been a part of admissions committees where we've read a lot of essays. For me, it's less about the idea or the experience that you're highlighting and more about the perspective that you are providing through your writing, right? So I had a student that got into Cornell University a few years back. Her essay was about a hide and seek game and how this particular hide and seek game made her think about how she doesn't want to get lost in a crowd and how that motivated her throughout the rest of her life. It was a beautiful essay. And it had nothing to do with a particular accomplishment or activity. It was all about the perspective that she had built from this particular experience. So it doesn't have to be anything that is, and I think so many students are so concerned that their resume is not strong enough to get into a school, that they haven't done enough in order to get in there. And as a coach, I feel like my job is to help pull out these really unique experiences that you've had that you don't realize you've had, and help to build an essay that creates a really interesting and unique perspective. Because to me, admissions committees have read it all. There is nothing that you can actually write that they haven't read before. But what you can bring is a unique perspective or twist on that particular experience that is uniquely yours.
And if I can add 100% what Christian and Amanda have already said, and if it had an impact on you, if it impacted you or somebody close to you and you have an emotional response to it, that's going to be a better essay than something that you maybe did a good job at, but you don't have an emotion attached to it. So keep that in mind, because those little moments and the little things that happen that have a big emotional impact will also have an emotional impact on the readers, on the admissions committee.
Yeah, all 3 of those points were incredible. I think thank you for sharing that. I think that is really the secret here. People will not remember what you said or did. They'll remember how your essay made them feel, and that is through your perspective, through your emotion, and through you highlighting yourself, even if it's something that seems small, as someone that's initiated change or is passionate about a specific problem. That is excellent. Thank you, guys. I'll open this up to anyone that feels strongly, but I'm curious what you guys think about folks that have lower GPAs or lower test scores and how to think about kind of making up for that, or any other specific tips that you think would be helpful to those folks.
Well, I had a dad reach out to me last year, and he had taken a tour of the campus with an admissions officer with his daughter. And this is kind of the opposite example, but you'll see why I'm telling it. And he told the admissions officer everything about his daughter's credentials, which were quite remarkable. And the officer just looked at him and said, all that matters are the essays, which isn't completely true. We know that. But it does show that the essays can do a lot to make up the difference of other things in your application. Even if they're really good, the essays matter a lot. And that also matters if you've got lower scores on other things, because the essays have so much weight. And that's where you can tell your stories about maybe why something didn't go so well one year because of something that was happening at home, or all kinds of situations that you can explain about yourself in those essays that you can't do anywhere else.
That's great.
Yeah, I would say test scores are another great opportunity. This is going to be, you know, a little bit taboo because there's a visceral response to test scores, I think sometimes, but that's another great way to show that you are academically ready for the rigor of the classes at BYU, is to really knock it out of the park with your test scores. So doing everything you can to get the best score you possibly can, especially in a year where it's still test optional. If you have a really strong score that fits within that median range that John showed at the very beginning of the slideshow, if you're in that range, submit your score, submit, because it will do nothing but strengthen your application to be able to show that you're academically prepared.
You know, I remember reading this one application, you know, from lots of applications from students who are like, well, I just love music, right? I just want to be a great musician. But then one student wrote that she saw the impact that music had in her life in high school, and she wanted to one day become a music teacher so that she could have that exact same kind of impact on future teenagers, right? And that taught me a really important lesson, that while everybody else was, you know, showing how they wanted to pursue their passions, one student really stood out regardless of the scores, right? By showing how they had a problem that they were passionate about solving instead. So that's one of the things, is instead of talking about your passions, one way you can really step out and showcase what you're doing is tell me, what are some of the problems that you're passionate about solving? And that's where we as coaches come in, is, you know, sitting down with you and talking with you about these questions and helping you kind of dig in and find things within yourself that maybe you hadn't considered before. So how can you stand out from lower GPAs and scores? Tell me how you want to go change the world.
Great. Thank you all. So Amanda mentioned this briefly, and I think this is generally the advice that we recommend is, don't submit it if it's below that median range, and submit it if it is. And you know, so basically 27 or above on the ACT is usually the range that we recommend. I think 26 and 25, you could probably, you know, argue either way, but usually we recommend submitting that, especially if you have a strong GPA. Usually we recommend, you know, only submitting if it's above 27. That doesn't mean though that you should not care or you should not try, because it can really help. If you can get into that range, BYU loves that, because then they can publish those high test scores and it helps them boost that average rating. So that's usually what we recommend there. I'm going to go to Christian for this one. Do you think, in your experience, does it help folks to declare a major? How does BYU think about declaring a major? I know a lot of these folks probably don't know what they want to do. So how should they think about that?
You know, if it aligns, right, in what you're writing and what you're saying, then I don't think it hurts at all to declare a major. In fact, I think it helps a lot. Though if you're declaring a major that is just so completely different from everything that you've written and everything that your recommenders are writing about, then that creates some discrepancies for readers, right? And that can create some challenges. So I personally don't think it's a problem, but you just got to make sure, if you're saying that, how does the rest of your story and the rest of your essays align with that to show that you have a clear vision?
That's great. Okay, we're gonna do this last question, and then I'm getting a lot of questions. So we're gonna spin up a little link that folks can drop their questions in, and you can upvote the questions that you really want to hear the answers to, and we'll take a couple of questions at the end of this. I know we haven't been able to get to everyone's questions, but we'll do our best. But would love to hear from all three of you. Any final tips? We didn't even scratch the surface. I mean, we barely scratched the surface of everything that we could talk about. And of course, a lot of it comes into like your unique situations and your own personal narrative. But any additional tips that you recommend clients when they're applying to BYU? Maybe we'll start with you, Amanda, and then go to Susie and then Christian.
Yeah, I think one of the most important things to remember about your BYU application, and this applies to other college applications as well, is that they're not rejecting you. If you don't get in, they're not rejecting you. I think there's so much pressure to feel like I have to be the right fit for this school. How do I, through my essays, show that I'm the right fit for them? And I think, you know, what Christian said at the very beginning applies to this as well, which is the essays are more of a chance for you to show how they are the right fit for you, not the other way around, right? To show this is a school that's going to help me to achieve my long-term goals, and this is how, right? And how does BYU uniquely fit? Like if you were to write out a resume for BYU, submitting to your job that you are hiring them to do, what would that resume have to look like? And do they line up with that, right? And this will also help you in the spring after you get all of your letters of acceptance to all the different schools that you're applying to help you select the school that's going to be the best one for you personally for the next 4 years. So really thinking about what are my must-haves in these schools? What are the must-haves? What are the nice-to-haves? How do they measure up to that? And doing your research, not only on the university as a whole, but if you are interested in a specific major, going to the major's website, looking at the faculty, what kinds of work are they doing? What interesting things are coming out of this particular department that are really fascinating to you? I think all those things not only help you to make a decision, but make your essay stronger because you can pull on those really specific things that they have on their resume that are drawing you to hire them for that job that you are hiring them to do for the next 4 years. But good luck, everybody. So excited for this very unique opportunity that you have.
Susie, do you want to go next? And Erica did just drop the link to the Slido, which is where you can put questions in. And I'm getting a bunch of DMs, so make sure you do that, and we'll go through a couple questions at the very end. Go for it, Susie.
All right, I love everything that Amanda just said. Just so good. To BYU and any other schools that you're applying to, it can be really overwhelming, and you've never done this before. So get as many people on your team as you can. A coach is invaluable. Your parents, mentors, adult mentors, and have them help you with this process. They will have ideas about who you are and what you can contribute and how to present yourself. Often ideas that you will never have unless they pull them out of you. So get people on your team and start early. And so you can have as many options as possible, as many doors opened as possible in the end.
It's great. All right, Christian.
Yeah, as someone who's used to be on the undergraduate admissions team at BYU, right? The associate director of the MBA program. I was a director of an internship for LG Electronics. I'm here to tell you that your success in life has less to do with where you go to college, but more so why you're going to college. Okay, that's the real thing here. And our goal as coaches is first and foremost to build you as a person and help you find confidence in the things that may get you excited about and what you want to do with your life. That's what gets us really excited, right? And we're here to walk you through the application, the technicalities of, how to do that. But the other thing that I would add is, treat this, it's funny. If you were to go buy a car, right, or buy a house, how much research would you do on that house or car, right? That's essentially what you're doing. And so dig into the major. Who is a professor that you're interested in? And then mention that in some of your essays, because very few people actually do the research to see why they're buying this experience to begin with. And if you do that, you're going to stand out. And last of all, start early. Really, now is the time. And the more time that you have to create a longer runway, because when school starts, it is going to get crazy and insane and stressful. And so BYU released the essays. They're all available. You just saw them here tonight. So it's never too early to start just brainstorming and talking about it with people that really care for you and have your best interest at heart. We're so excited for you guys. And thank you so much for joining our call tonight.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Thank you all. Okay, we're gonna turn to a couple of questions after we just wrap up. Thank you all three of you for being here. This was so helpful. We've dropped a bunch of links in the chat. We'll drop their profiles again. You're welcome to reach out to them to talk through any of your specific questions or your unique situations. And of course, explore the opportunity of potentially working with them. They do all fill up. They're three of the best. So get started early if you want to reserve one of their slots. They're limited. We will also go 10 times deeper with each of these three coaches in this upcoming boot camp. So make sure you sign up for that. I know most of you have already, but it's free and it starts in August. So make sure you sign up and get one of the spots. And then we'll drop our link to chat with us if you want to talk to one of our BYU alums, Leland team members. We're happy to talk through your unique situation as well, and talk through potential opportunities to get coaching help with the Common App in order to get free help with BYU. We used to do some hourly help, but because of the BYU rule, we really want to provide an option that you can feel confident in, and that's in line with their services, or their application. Okay, with that, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to pull up the Q&A. You can upvote questions as well. So make sure you do that so that we can know which questions you would like to start with. Oh, we have a lot of activity in here. This is great. Nice work, everyone. Okay, let me go through this. Okay, I'm going to share my screen here, and we will talk through some of these questions. All right, so I've heard that BYU reads the essays first without even looking at GPA and ACT and eliminates some candidates at that point. Is that true? I don't know if any of you three want to talk to this. Christian, go for it.
Yeah, that is true. So they do it's a score blind read initially, where we're just reading, the essays, the letters of recommendation, the ecclesiastical endorsement, and we make a judgment call off of that, because research shows that our views of a student can be influenced by whether or not we know what their scores are if we're admissions readers. And so they do a score blind read, and then later the scores from the read and the scores from your test scores are combined to create a cumulative assessment.
That's great. All right. The next question is, how critical or weighted on the application are harder classes in high school?
Well, if you are going to a school that does weighted GPAs, BYU does not accept those scores. So you just want to, in my experience, you want to weigh what grade you're going to get versus what you're going to get out of the class. If you're likely to get a lower GPA, if you take all hard classes, then you want to very carefully select which classes you're going to take that are harder, that you're likely to get, high scores on, high grades on.
Great. Okay.
They do give some consideration for AP classes, but not honors classes, because that's not a nationally recognized curriculum. But yeah, the strategy of preserving the GPA to be as high as possible is really smart.
That's great. Are there any topics or interests that one should avoid in the essays? Things that essay reviewers tend to dislike. Amanda, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, politically hot button topics should just across all applications be eliminated from essays. I think one thing that people love to do that I always strike out is quotes at the very beginning of your essay. This is about you. It's not about somebody else. So Christian is also, so any historical or political hot button topics, just take them off your list. Those are not great, and they turn people off. You don't know who's reading your essay. So you want to eliminate anything that's going to offend somebody in some sort of way that you can just cross it off your list.
Yep, that's great. What's a good length for an essay? I'll take this one. So of course, quality over quantity is important. They give you word limits. And I would take the time to share as much about you as possible. I don't think adding, 3 sentences in an essay is going to gain you, much ground or favor with the admissions committee. So of course you don't want to just ramble on forever, but they give you word limits to kind of prevent that anyways. So, you should be packing in as much value and narrative as possible. Often if you feel like you don't have enough to write about, it's because you're not telling a story. You're just telling them something. And so really think about the stories that you're telling, because it's very quickly too long of an essay.
I had a student submit an essay, not one of my clients, but when I was working at BYU, and it said, "I'm keeping this essay short so you can go home and be with your family." Thanks. Bad score, but yeah, also that character count limit is a real thing. If you are 1 or 2 characters over and you paste that document in, it's simply just going to cut it off, right?
Yeah.
So there are a lot of times I'd be reading an application, getting really excited, and then all of a sudden, boom, they hit the character limit, and that's it. There's no extra space on that.
Every single character counts. It's
It
tricky,
really does.
but you can do it. Yeah.
That's great. Okay, we're gonna go to a couple of these other questions. We have two more questions. Does the teacher recommendation have to be a core subject or any teacher?
Core subject.
Core subject, junior or senior year.
Yes. How much of a priority is being well-rounded? I'll share my perspective, and you 3 are welcome to disagree. I think you are not going to be admitted for being perfect in every way, because no one is perfect in every way. And I think that what you really want to convey is unique spikes that make you interesting as a candidate, right? So this could be problems you're passionate about. This could be, things you've taken initiative on. This could be some specific experience that taught you something really interesting. They're not going to give you any points for just being, I'm average at everything. You're gonna really shine by being unique in a few different ways. Anything else you guys would add on that?
I would say I kind of steer my clients in 2 different directions. There are some people that are diehard in one particular area, right? I'm working with a client right now who is on like a national tour for golfing. So most of our essays are going to be thematic around her determination and everything that she does with her national level golfing, right? But if you don't have like a very specific niche, I tend to try to help those clients have a thematic element to their essays. So even though you're well-rounded, there's some common strand that we're pulling together between each of the essays, because it's just easier as an admissions professional to be able to say, ooh, okay, this person has this thing going on for them. And I love the way you said it, John, that there's, unique spikes throughout your journey that you can tie together in some thematic way to create your own personal brand.
And then that helps the committee know what types of impact you can have on the campus and what you can contribute. And that's going to be important as they're considering you.
It's great.
They're not looking for well-rounded candidates, so to speak, but to create a well-rounded class of unique people, right? So lean into that.
That's great. Okay, we are at time. We opened up the chat. Do you mind showing some love for these coaches? And they took time out of their evenings to be with us. I know they love BYU on a Thursday evening. You're welcome to drop in. Yes, just thank you guys. It's super interesting, super helpful. I know there's so many parents that are appreciative and getting a bunch of DMs. So we hope to see you at the boot camp. Again, it's free. So we're going to go deep on all these topics, and you can I know we had like 70 questions that we didn't get to, which I'm sorry about, but we hope to see you there. We hope to answer more of your questions, and thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go Cougars.
Good luck with everything. We're rooting for you all.